One morning I walked out onto my porch, coffee still warm in my hand, and there it was, a concrete mixer, rumbling right next to my dock. Rebar stacked like spears, survey flags stabbed into the earth, and at the top of the hill stood Karen Whitaker, HOA, president of Whispering Pines, barking into a walkie-talkie as if she owned the lake. My lake, my family's land. That was the moment I knew this wasn't confusion, it wasn't some clerical mistake. This was war. I never asked for trouble. After 32 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, I retired to Clearwater Lake to live out my days in peace. The lake had been in my family since 1952, 3 generations of Thompsons fishing off the dock, paddling canoes, cleaning bluegills. I built my ranch-style house with my own hands, wide porch wrapping around like a gentle arm. I thought that lake would stay mine forever untouched, quiet eternal. Then Whispering Pines moved in. It started like an invading army. Bulldozers clearing trees, backhoes digging trenches, sod rolling out like a green carpet for houses that looked cloned from a magazine. At first, I told myself progress was inevitable. They built on the north side. Fine, I thought, as long as they stayed there. But Whispering Pines came with a board, and that board came with Karen. She knocked on my door at 7:15 a.m., one Tuesday clipboard in hand, khaki slacks, a pinched smile that made my teeth itch. She launched into some speech about shared ecosystem responsibilities and community alignment. She even mentioned guidelines for dock paint colors as if my grandfather hadn't fished off that same dock before her parents were even born. I looked her in the eye and said, "Lady, I don't belong to your HOA." Her smile twitched, but she kept going, hinting that they were applying for a zoning overlay to include the entire lakefront. Translation, they wanted to annex my land. From there, the encroachments piled up. A fence crept closer to my side. Homeowners walked their dogs across my trails. Jet skis roared late into the night. I filed complaints with the sheriff, zoning anyone who would listen. But Karen always stayed one step ahead, inaccurate maps, community initiatives, whatever excuse she needed. I told myself to hold steady, but then came that morning with the cement truck and I realized I'd underestimated just how far she'd go. By sunrise the next day, I was staring at a brand-new chain-link fence 10 feet from my porch, portable toilets, and lumber stacked behind it like they were setting up camp on my history. When Karen showed up in her pressed blouse and perfect hair, I demanded answers. She called it a temporary safety measure. I said, "On my land." She smiled like a politician and said, "That's something we'll be clearing up very soon." She even warned me that trespassing on the worksite could have legal implications, my own land. I filed more complaints, drove to county offices, and that's when I found a forged plat map drawn in red ink, shifting my boundary line by 30 feet. My dock, my slope, even part of the woods, all conveniently absorbed into Whispering Pines. No surveyor's stamp, no authorization, just Karen's signature and her arrogance. I scanned everything, uploaded it all. But that night I sat at my kitchen window staring at the floodlights across the lake, and for the first time I doubted myself. I'll be honest, I thought maybe I was the fool. Maybe I should just let it go. Who was I, an old engineer with a bum knee, to fight an HOA president with money lawyers and connections? The thought of sinking tens of thousands into a legal battle made me sick. I even asked myself if I was being stubborn holding on to land when the world had already moved on. For a moment, I almost quit. But then, I opened an old metal footlocker in the attic. Inside were the deeds, the surveys, and a 1954 topo map hand-drawn by my grandfather. In pencil, he'd written Thompson Family Shoreline. Seeing that changed me. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about pride. It was about legacy. So I picked up the phone and called an old friend, Walter Burnell, my buddy from the Corps, now a real estate attorney. Walter didn't hesitate. He flipped through the evidence like a machine and said, "You're sitting on a gold mine. This map. This is the bullet. No court will deny this." I asked why she was still building then, and he smirked. "Because she thinks you'll fold. Most people would, but you're not most people." By the end of the day, he had filed for an injunction. Court was set for Thursday. The day of the hearing, I sat in the back, nerves twisting my stomach. Karen swept in with 2 attorneys in suits sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't even glance at me. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman named Ellerby, started with Walter. He laid it all out: the deeds, the topo map, the GPS video, the forged submission. When Karen's lawyer tried to argue erosion had blurred the boundaries, Walter calmly presented satellite photos showing the shoreline hadn't budged in 30 years. The judge leaned forward, tapped the fake map, and said one word: fraud. Karen stiffened. Her attorney squirmed. And then Walter landed the hammer, pointing out that the mansion not only sat on stolen land, but also had no permits, no inspections, and violated environmental setback laws. Judge Ellerby's voice cut like a knife. I'm issuing an immediate stop work order. This case will be referred for investigation into land fraud and permit violations. For the first time, Karen's face went pale. I walked out that day breathing easier, but I knew the war wasn't over. While Walter dug deeper, I went to the archives. Hours of microfilm and dusty files finally led me to a 1975 easement signed by my grandfather establishing a 100-foot preservation buffer around the southern shoreline. That meant Karen hadn't just trespassed, she'd broken state environmental law. With that document in hand, everything shifted. Environmental inspectors descended on the site. Reporters printed headlines: HOA, President under investigation. Whispering Pines residents turned on her when they realized she'd funneled their money into her private mansion. For the first time, I wasn't alone. The second court hearing was different. The gallery was packed: neighbors, reporters, environmental groups. Karen walked in, a late, hair-tied back, gray suit hanging off her shoulders. Gone was the smug queen. She looked like a defendant waiting for sentencing. Walter presented the easement, the financial misappropriation, even the discovery of my family's cemetery stones on the property. HOA members gasped when they realized she'd lied about building a clubhouse. Judge Ellerby didn't need long. She granted me permanent injunction, ordered the mansion demolished at HOA expense, and referred Karen for criminal investigation. The sound of the gavel might as well have been artillery fire. It was over. I stood on my porch a week later, watching county crews dismantle the mansion piece by piece. Windows pulled out like teeth, siding ripped down, roof beams crashing into the dirt. Finally, the foundation itself was jackhammered into rubble. Dust rose across the lake as if the earth itself was exhaling. And then Karen showed up. She stumbled from a white SUV, hoodie pulled tight, eyes wild. She ducked under the caution tape and screamed at the crew. "You don't have the authority." "This is my house." They ignored her, kept working. She turned on me, her face twisted with rage. "This is your fault. You could have let it go. You didn't have to take everything." I didn't shout. I didn't move. I just said slow and steady, "You never had it." Her knees buckled. She crumpled into the mud, covering her face, while behind her the bulldozers crushed the last remnants of her empire. Concrete, steel, glass all hauled away like trash. What she thought would stand 100 years was gone in 4 days. That's where my story ends. With silence on the shoreline, scars in the earth that will heal with time, and the knowledge that power built on lies will always collapse. And if there's one thing I learned, it's this: when someone tries to rewrite your story, you better be ready to fight for the pen.